Welcome to the Grandpa Channel, where stories don't fade, they get recorded. I'm Steve Harris. My grandkids call me Rivers. This podcast is where grandpas and grandchildren pull up a chair, turn on a mic, and let her rip. Grandpa stories are chock full of wisdom, life lessons, and frankly, funny as hell. Your stories are the magic elixir to help your grandkids navigate Mr. Toad's wild ride, aka life. Let's Grandpa. This episode of the Grandpa Channel is brought to you by Hires Big H, home of wonderful hamburgers, French fries, onion rings, the magical and medicinal, so I say, root beer freeze. Head to Hires and treat yourself like the legend that you are. Now back to the channel. We have an amazing guest here on the Grandpa Channel today. His name is Mike Matthews. This is the first time I've met Mike. He's a friend of my daughter and my son-in-law, and he is flat out amazing. And I'm so glad to have met you, to meet you. And I want you to tell me just a little bit about you, Mike, and then talk about your grandma. Even though this is the Grandpa Channel, I want you to talk a little bit about this wonderful grandma of yours.
Yeah. I grew up in Fremont, California, and I've lived in New York City for about 21 years.
Yeah.
And I just got married 4 years ago. My wife is a chief nursing officer at a hospital, and she has 3 kids. So I moved into the stepdad realm real quick.
Yeah.
One of them is still at home. She's 15 and a sophomore in high school. I had this, which I think many people have had, which is like a seasonal relationship with their grandparents. In particular, for me, my grandma, I'd see her for holidays, and it was very, I don't want to say surface level conversations, but it certainly wasn't like this connection that I felt drawn to her to call all the time and those type of things. And then when I was in high school, she was getting older, into her 90s. And so she moved in with my parents in the Seattle, Washington area where we had moved when I was in high school there. And that's when I really got to get to know my grandma, Eileen. And that's when it kind of changed our relationship. And it went from seasonal to, I would say, best friends.
Wow. It's a wonderful transition.
So I discovered my grandmother's amazing, and she's one of those people that had so much love and empathy to give. It went beyond my own family. I worked in Midtown. I had a coworker that came in, and she's like this Brooklyn hipster. She wears like gold jewelry. She's so cool. I can't explain how cool she is. Like, I only want to be her friend, and I want her to think I'm cool, which would be the pinnacle. And she came in to my office one day, and she said she showed like her underbelly. She was very vulnerable, and she'd just broken up with a long-term boyfriend, like 4 or 5 year boyfriend. And so she wasn't necessarily like crying, but she was really emotional. And I was like, whoa, this is catching me off guard to even see her in this state. And so, I just showed some level of empathy. And I had just this thought. I just said, I know this is going to sound crazy. My grandma lives in the Seattle, Washington area. She has a landline phone, and she loves my friends, and honestly, friends that she's never met face to face. I wrote down her landline number. I slid it across my desk to my coworker. And I said, if you want to talk to an awesome grandma, here it is. And that was it. And she said, Mike, that's the weirdest thing I've ever heard. You to call your grandmother, who I've never met, and talk about a breakup that I just had. And I'm like, I know it sounds crazy. I had zero confidence that would happen. This is a Friday. That particular weekend, I think she got into a really hard, dark place. She gave it a try. So she actually called my grandma on Saturday. My grandma picks up. All she said is, I'm a friend of Mike's, and they just talk. That's it. My grandma didn't ask anything else, and just listen to her go through and share. And I had no idea they had this conversation. And Monday rolls around. The same coworker comes in, and she's just full of energy. Comes to my office. She closes the door, sits down. She's like, Mike, first off, I'm in love with your grandmother. She said, I just feel lifted was the key word. She's like, I feel lifted. I feel like everything is going to be okay. I honestly can't tell you what advice she gave or what it was. I just feel like I know the world's going to be okay. And that was, I could not stop thinking about that. The idea that my grandma has so much to give, it goes beyond my family. And then here's this Brooklyn hipster that walks in, has this experience with my grandmother. I was like, I literally could go on Etsy, buy a lemonade stand, put it on a New York City street corner with a laptop and headphones and a chair, and she can meet anybody, literally anybody, and they can hopefully have the same experience of feeling lifted. And so I just gave it a try. I bought
Lifted. I love that. The idea of that's what grandparents should be doing, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So that was it. So I had a 90-pound lemonade stand, wood lemonade stand, show up at my house.
Yeah.
In the middle of summer, and it was so heavy, and I was sweating getting this thing out there.
Yeah.
And my grandma was in her mid-90s, and she couldn't really travel to New York anymore. It's my way of bringing New York to her and my world, and just went out in the street corner and just set up. And then just from 2012 until 2016, we would go out perhaps like once a week, depending on the weather and everything else. And she did that until she passed away at 102 years old.
That's incredible. So were you surprised by the variety of answers that you would get? Or did they kind of follow, a script? Or did you ever have anybody tee off on a grandmother like, I wish she had been better, or she was judgmental, or I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I had these discussion prompts that people would kind of guide the conversation, because my grandmother is, I mean, when I had a sign that said, talk to my 101-year-old grandmother, and they sit down and she's beautiful and has great skin. So that could be the whole discussion, is like, wow, you look so great. Yeah. What's your skin regimen? Yeah. What's the secret to life? She's like, ask that all the time. And so I thought, well, what if I could manipulate this conversation, at least the beginnings of it? And here's the discussion prompt. So there's a little bucket. I just handwrite questions that were on my mind. It could be like, who's someone you need to forgive? What makes your grandmother unique? What's a conversation you wish you could have again? And people would pick these out of a little bucket, and then on the spot, they would respond and share their story with my grandmother. So it wasn't necessarily there for wisdom from her. It was honestly for them to share how they felt about something. And my grandmother would just follow up with empathy and asking additional questions.
She must have been incredible.
Incredible. She's incredible. So it made people feel so safe. Grandparents should be, not all, but a grandparent that's safe. But then you add on top of that, it's an anonymous grandmother.
Yeah.
On a street corner.
A beautiful
with headphones. Whatever I say, it's not being recorded. Like I honestly could share whatever I want. So why not be honest? Generally New Yorkers are really honest. It always was an elevated conversation, and there'd be a line of people just waiting to sit down and talk with Grandma Eileen.
So how many of those interviews happened over how long a period of time was it?
6 years.
6 years. Mm-hmm. And then what happened?
She probably talked, I would say we'd go out for 2 to 2.5 hours until I was like, Grandma, how are you doing?
Yeah.
Not just physically, like emotionally. Like, she'd hear a lot too, depending on like who you need to forgive, as an example. I mean, that was a lot. But yeah, she'd probably talk to 20 to 25 people every time she went out.
Really?
At least. People were pretty good. New Yorkers are good about like getting to the point and then being done. Yeah. And if there's people waiting, they know to kind of like move on. And I'm always physically there or near the stand. So I was good about like, oh, hey, someone's not to ever like interject in any way, but kind of keep things kind of moving too. And So
what did you pull away from all of this? I mean, you listened to, could you hear both sides, or could you just?
No, I would hear recaps from my grandma, what things stood out.
Yeah.
On occasion, I would talk to people after they'd sat down with my grandma and say, do you mind if I record a little video, or tell me about your experience? So I would hear bits and pieces, but honestly, my grandma was a lockbox. Like even my coworker back in the Brooklyn coworker, I really don't even know what they talked about still to this day. And she kept that in.
Really?
Yeah, she's really good about that.
To be a person like that, that's something to be.
Yeah, it is.
And I think that, what you're describing too is a situation where you're reaching out and you're lifting, that you feel like you've lifted a grandkid or, somebody else. You might not be a blood grandpa for somebody, but what if that person was specifically put into your orbit and you were supposed to lift them?
Yeah.
What do you think her superpower was?
I think her superpower was, in short, listening. But I would say when you would talk to my grandmother, Eileen, it's hard to explain. And maybe someone like this in your life, and I could be telling her very spiritual or sad or funny. And by the end of that sentence, it could be turning into something completely opposite. It could be starting spiritual, ending up with a laugh. It could be really sad and turning into something joyful. And no matter what roller coaster of emotion you're bringing into a conversation, she'll meet you exactly where you're at. And so you always want to feel safe with a grandparent. She added this extra layer of safety where I know whatever I say is going to be met by her. So I can just be exactly how I'm feeling at all moments of time. I'm not gatekeeping anything from her. And so with that, I feel like I'm free. And that was, I think, her superpower. And I think why me and not just my family, but certainly outside, all gravitated towards her. She had a brown leather chair in her room in my parents' home. And if I could fly out to Seattle, I could show up and there'd be someone sitting next to that chair. That's a neighbor or anyone. It was always just a 40-year-old mom just sitting there talking with my grandmother Eileen. And I know most grandparents can actually live in very lonely, isolated lives. My grandma really didn't. She felt that, I'm sure, at times, because more than anything, she missed her husband, Larry.
Well, when did he pass away?
Let's see. I would have been in junior high.
Quite a while.
It's been a while. She's like, I don't know why I'm living this long. She's like, my doctor told me to drink a Coke a day. I've been just doing that. But she's like, I want to go tapioca more than anyone.
Yeah.
Her words. But I'm around for something. And so she stuck around until she was 102.
Yeah. So did she have a gregarious personality or kind of quiet?
Very quiet, very present, she had a signature laugh that is well known. I could play that laugh and anyone that knows her can identify it immediately. That's Eileen's laugh.
Yeah.
That was immediate.
Yeah.
She grew up during the Depression. She has Prohibition stories. I mean, she's got it all. Yeah. So for her to talk about like her life and what it felt like to go through World War II and and hard things in her life, everything is cyclical. Like she never had these incredibly profound out of like a psychologist book. It didn't need to be this quotable thing for her. It was just, she's seen so much. And so she can hear you talking about the Brooklyn friend that had the 5-year breakup and seen so many divorces and breakups in her life to know exactly how to react in that moment, which is just show love and the reassurance that you're going to be okay and validate that person. Yeah. And that's what she would do.
So it didn't sound like she was pushy. No. Like, let me solve all of your problems.
Never. You came to her. Yeah. She would never be. The Matthews genes in me are a lot more gregarious and and the Wilkinson side on her is very much more contemplative and hands off and you come to me and to chat.
Wow. Do you think that her skill set is something that she was born with, or did she develop it over time? And can it be extrapolated to grandfathers, I guess is what I'm saying.
100%. Well, absolutely. That's a really good question. I mean, not knowing exactly who she was growing up, I can only make my assumptions and ask my mother about those experiences. But when I talk about her living in Bethesda, Maryland, and my mom being raised by her, it sounds very identical, that it was just this wildly acceptance of other people.
Really?
And also wanting to keep things, for the lack of a better term, classy.
Not with a K, right?
Not with the C. Yeah. Just very kind of this element of, she just preferred to have people over for dinner to just sit down and chat about important things. There was nothing seemingly superficial about her. And I think that always carried through. Yeah.
Did you have many memories of her husband, your grandfather?
Not many.
Isn't it?
Yeah. He was an engineer. He worked with Edward Murrow at points, and he has a very distinct whistle, and he always had change in his pocket and keys that you could hear kind of jingling. But when I would come over, he was always busy working. He was always fixing or doing something in the home. And of course, I was pretty young. And I didn't have a ton of interactions. So my life got to get to know him through my grandmother's stories. And she was like, people don't understand how funny he was because he was so quiet. So she's made him feel more real to me.
Really?
Because of the love between the two.
Yeah.
It's so tangible. Yeah. And one thing that she'll always tell me is, she used to say a lot was, people don't think, they know that I miss my husband, but they stop asking about him because they think it's going to be too hard for me to talk about.
Yeah.
It's all I want to do is talk about him.
Really?
I want to talk about my husband.
Yeah.
What do you miss about him? Like that kind of thing. And she's like, you can ask about Larry. Like, I want to talk about him. And when people ask, like, what do you think your grandmother is doing today? Is she proud of what you're doing? And maybe, but honestly, she's so busy hanging out with Larry. I think she's maybe checking in with me.
Can I answer that question for you? Hell yes. That's how I would answer that, especially with how you honor her by what you did, the relationship that you've had. My goodness. Okay, so here's kind of a metaphysical question. Okay, your grandma's here. We somehow teleport her from the realms of heaven, and she has a 5-minute sort of window, and she's sitting here. What do you think she'd say?
I think she would say, you interrupted me hanging out with Larry. So she'd be a little mad about that. I think I know she'd be very proud of me.
Yeah.
Like she was like, there's so much untapped wisdom. There's so much you are doing right now, at least for grandmothers, that's what she appreciates. You're making them they're seen and they're validated by so many people. She'd be proud of that. Like, this is your legacy, grandmother. This is why I'm doing it, is for you. So that would be it. Like, she would give me some good validation on that.
This is really out of the ordinary. Have you had any experiences with your grandma since her death?
Yeah. I'm
asking you to share,
No, 100%. When I'm asked, what's interesting is what I do today with the grandma stand, which I know we'll get to a little bit too, is like, I'll always focus on that. And then when I'm talking to someone's media or something, they'll sort of ask me questions about her. And I'm like buttoned up with my bullet points. And they ask my grandma, and I'm like, they cut my whole Kelly Clarkson interview out because I was crying because Kelly went right to my grandma. And I'm like, it was hard for me to even talk about her. But, I forgot the question already.
I forgot it too. Have you had it?
Yes. Yeah. She seems like she's one of those individuals that I can kind of call on at any point. Yeah. And I had those experiences before, talking to some media folks about it. And certainly setting up the grandma stand itself, checking in with her to say, like, hey, I'm doing this for you.
What do you think?
Is this okay? Help me make sure that I'm like saying the things that perhaps people that are viewing or experiencing the grandma stand or seeing something on the media in some sort, that they'll feel inspired to either reconnect, or build a better relationship with their own respective grandma or grandpa. And that makes her happy. And that's what motivated her to continue doing the grandma stand was just that. She's like, people will often say, Grandma Eileen, this makes me want to call my grandma, or whoever serves in that role in my life. And for her, she's like, that's all I want. She didn't care about fame, social media, her attention on her, had zero interest in any of those things. Maybe 2%. She had something to brag about to people. It was radical. But, I mean, that was being the face of Wendy's was kind of cool. But but that's what made her happy. She's like, all right, this is like elevating like literally the question that we just talked about at the stand. Now you go talk to your grandma about the same topic, instead of, hi, grandma, how's the weather? How are you doing? Elevate the conversation and use these kind of questions. I think she would reinforce that if she were. Anyway, so when I talk to her, I think there's a validation that I can feel from her. Continue doing this, not as much as you can because your wife will divorce you because it's not paid, but do this in a healthy manner that continues to bring in as many grandmothers as possible.
So let me ask you, what did her voice sound like? How would you describe her voice?
My grandmother had the softest, it's a very soft voice, but with the most distinct laugh ever. She has a giggle that is, I could play for any person that I know, and they would know that it's Grandmother Eileen. Immediately. In fact, people would always tell me, I miss her laugh. I hear that all the time when I talk to someone. But her voice is one that isn't rushed. And you can tell when you're talking to her, she's thinking about who you are and how you're really doing and who you really are, as opposed to thinking about the next thing she wants to say.
Instead of next.
Right. So when you're talking, the only thing that her mind is working towards is another question to ask about that. It's tell me more. It's not, oh, you're having a rough time with life. Well, here's what I was facing. It's not jumping right into.
It's not one-upmanship.
Right. Which is a great wisdom. Like, I almost had to extract stories from her life almost aggressively because I'm like, well, no, Grandma, I want to hear more about tell me about this. She's more apt to just like tell me more.
Did she come from some tragedies in her life?
No, she had a very, comparatively, a privileged life. Being born and like raised in Bethesda, Maryland, she had a healthy relationship with her parents. She had a healthy relationship with her husband, Larry, certainly. And she raised my mom, who's great, and all her kids are great. I think it's hard to say what's been really necessarily tragic in her life. Yeah, comparatively, the stories certainly that I've heard from other grandparents, she's lived a very good life, but it's been invested in other people her entire life. I can't think of a time when she wasn't involving and building community around her.
Really?
Yeah.
So how would she do that?
She was big on having it's a very East Coast thing. It's just, we're having a group of interesting people over for dinner and we're going to discuss topics that are of interest. It's not surface level conversation, but it's not so buttoned up that you're uncomfortable. Everyone's accepted. But that was the interest, I think, of my grandparents, Larry and Eileen, was that. And so when people would open up and show any kind of, whether it's vulnerability or some of their academic background or nature and interest, I think that just built a community around them. She would always have someone in her home. It was always filled with people. And then me being raised by one of her daughters, I can vouch for that. There was never a time there wasn't someone in our home.
Really?
Yeah.
That's so cool. So how would you take the lessons or some of and you can't replicate Eileen. There's just no way you can do that. But what do you think some of the lessons that some of the grandpas on this channel, what can we learn, from Eileen? And, what do you think she would say to this vast audience of 27 followers? This ripples across the world.
It's just Kelly Clarkson and the 20. Oh, what would she say? That's a really good question. I think she would, if she was counseling someone on how to be Eileen, which she would never do, but in my mind, she would say, first and foremost, like, show empathy.
Really?
Like, wherever I don't think this is necessarily a concern with most grandparents. Make sure your cell phone is put away as far as humanly possible. And whatever is on your mind that you're thinking about next, whether it's what dinner are we going to make tonight or whatever it is, extract all those things from your mind and just look at the person and say, who are they really? Who is that person in front of me?
That's fabulous advice.
And she would just say, just ask a question. Just tell me more. Just ask questions as opposed to jumping into wisdom and advice.
She would be somebody I would love to meet in the next world. Is it still a project that's going on? And you've got, what did you call them? Grandmas in rotation?
Yeah, we have.
Love that.
It's so we go out once a week.
Yeah.
The grandma stand is painted purple, which is my grandma Eileen's favorite color.
Yeah.
And every week is in like a rotation of new grandma, new location in New York City.
Yeah.
And now a new discussion prompt.
Yeah.
And I would add, the great thing is I've heard from other cities that want to do this too. So right now there's one that's being set up in Berlin and Paris and Mexico, in outside Dallas, Texas, and LA and Minnesota. There's a whole bunch that are kind of franchising, if you will, the same stand to have it out there, which is really cool.
What do you think, Mike, you have learned from this exercise? How many people do you think participated? Do you have an exact number?
After 8 years and a lot of grandmas that have participated in this, I'd say we would have to do some quick math, but we probably 4,000 or 5,000 people, probably in 8 years worth of people that have stopped by. And on top of that, from a media perspective, it's kind of endless because they've spotlighted the grandma stand and interviews with the grandmas. And so that's certainly reach.
Are you on? I'm asking really stupid, elemental questions, but where would you go to find some of these? Are you online or
it's
a little bit of
grandma stand? It's just on Instagram is the main channel. So I grandma stand. And then, we're on TikTok and YouTube and everything like that. But it's, the grandma stand it's been everywhere on Today's Show and
really
just about every talk show you can think of, which is people craving good, wholesome stories. Yeah. And certainly when it comes to just this need we have to connect, this intergenerational connection that people want to talk about.
Right.
People want to talk about it. So what you're doing is exactly that.
Well, my thought is that we're all full of a lot of things, bad and good. But I think that grandpas underestimate, this is my personal theory, grandpas underestimate the power of the stories that are in them and the power of the stories to affect and help and serve as a fountain, as it were, of wisdom, peace, even, for their grandkids. And what about, the people that, let's say that you are a grandpa that lives away from your grandkids. You just kind of sit in your room and mope, or do you grandpa where you're planted and you share that, not in a heavy-handed beat you over the head sort of way, but I think a lot of grandpas don't think they've got stories that have power and are humorous. I love humorous stories. I can remember those all day long. And tell me a story, baby, and you got me. I'm on the hook. Yeah. And especially if it shows a grandpa to be, shall we say, less than godlike, just vulnerable.
What you said is ideal. What's that book, The Art of Not Giving a F? But I think there's something about when your world is only your grandkids, the almost, whatever the right term is, not desperate, but when it's just like, I just want them to call. I want them. I wish they would do more.
Desperation doesn't smell pretty.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. There's an element of like, the grandkids can feel that too. So I love this idea of, what did you say? Be a grandpa where you are.
Grandpa where you're planted.
Yeah. Grandpa where you're planted's ideal.
Yeah.
That's perfect. So the people around that, my coworker, for instance, like for me to see that, it was like a light bulb went out. I got it a little bit on my grandma Eileen. She's got a lot to offer. To see her and the healing that she did, I have access to her. I can call her anytime. Why am I not?
Yeah, why aren't they?
Right?
Yeah.
And I'll never forget this. It was a conversation I had with a grandma. She's from the Bronx, Grandma Flo. She wouldn't mind me sharing this. And her granddaughter came up to the grandma stand one day, sat down and said afterwards to me, my grandma will be perfect. I got a FaceTime with Grandma Flo and met her, and she's this beautiful, amazing lady. And so worked in the Bronx public school system for like decades. So she's now one of the grandmas in rotation, and very quiet, my quietest grandma, very soft-spoken grandmother. And one of the things that she told me was, she said, like, all my grandkids are calling me right now. She's like, they almost look at me a little bit differently because she was on NBC Nightly News. She got a lot of attention too. So beyond just like them seeing like a little video of people engaged in talking with her, random 20 New Yorkers coming up and talking to their grandmother or being on like a media channel of some sort, they all were like, well, hey, that's my grandma that maybe I'm taking advantage of, which we all do.
Yeah.
And so they're all kind of rushing to her more than
they see her in a new light.
It's a new light. Yeah. It's kind of elevated light. Yeah. And they love that because more than anyone, they're the top priority for that grandma.
Right.
Grandma Flo is the first to say, but she wrote a poem about this recently. Yeah. Just about how this brought me out of obscurity a little bit and loneliness and a little isolation. And so to your point, that's the grandma stand.
Yeah.
But this idea that just thinking about the neighbors around you, that you can be the grandpa for those neighbors that need it, because your grandkids will also see that. And it's not going to deprioritize them, but sometimes I'm like, deprioritize them. If they're not grateful for what they have, a healthy grandpa or grandma, then whatever. Yeah. Then they can figure it out on their own terms. Right. I don't want to put all the pressure and concern on the grandpas. You got to fix this or be better. You're not perfect. You're great at who you are. Just be yourself. Yeah. Be a grandpa to those that do appreciate that. If your own grandkids come along, then that's amazing. And that's what you want, obviously. But as long as they're always going to be, I just wish they would come to me kind of feeling, like that's not the way you want to live. You want to be seen and heard and have relationships and connection. And so I don't want to put the heat on us, the grandkids, and not the grandpas. There's always fine tuning on ways.
It's very interesting, the idea of lighting a fire under some grandkids a little bit, or illuminating this wonderful grandmother or grandfather. Maybe it's somebody you don't really fully appreciate. You probably saw your grandma in a different light.
100%. Yeah. A totally different light. Yeah. This is a weird kind of correlation, but there was an article, it was a USA Today poll years ago, And the question was asked, when are you the most attracted to your spouse or significant other? And the response that came through the survey was you're most attracted when you see your spouse serving, assisting, speaking, or helping, or doing something, performing a talent for other people. So you're on a stage presenting something and the spouse is off to the side watching. You're the most attracted seeing them do this. And I thought, wow, that's so interesting. It's not just like this one-on-one, I want to hear more words of affirmation. And I thought something similar. The grandparent then serving other people or being a grandpa to others. You see that and it quickly is like, man, this is someone in my life. Why aren't I actually paying more attention to this?
Why aren't I more like that person?
If you have to,
maybe you didn't even know you wanted to be like him because it was maybe a talent that he had that you haven't really seen illuminated or talked about. I think a lot of grandpas are sort of buttoned down. They, you hear about World War II veterans or Korean War or Vietnam War veterans who don't talk much about their service, and maybe for some good reasons, but I just wonder how many grandpas just have this hidden gems, Mike, of wisdom. And one of the things that I really think is really cool would be, what if grandpas could be fountains of peace? I need to be a fountain of peace and wisdom and just constantly bubbling up and hoping that they come and they take a cup, from that. And I mean, think about your Eileen. Oh my gosh,
I'd say the one thing that was hard for her that she got better at was that she also became more vulnerable.
Did she?
Comes from a generation where it is like hold in a lot of mental health concerns and issues and emotions and just say we just plowed through. When it calls for it, I think my grandmother was good to say, I did have some hard spots with my husband. It wasn't all just perfect. I did have a hard time when her son came out. And I've seen that relationship when it was healthy. But when he came out when he was in college, young guy, I wasn't around for that. And so, hearing that, no, I didn't handle this well. I handled it. This is the worst way I could have handled it was this. Today, it's great. But for me to see this evolution is such empathetic. It's such a nice thing for me to hear that my grandmother, Eileen, is not perfect, that she does have emotions. She has been hurt. She did handle things horribly sometimes and make mistakes and did feel hopeless during wars and relationship issues and things like that. Like, I think she got better over time, thinking that everyone's going to come to her and I have to be I went through this, you're going to be okay. It's actually, I didn't handle this well. And I'm still here. And that I think is a big lesson.
I think it gives people courage. And you say that you love, this wonderful woman, Eileen, and you just say, she messed up and look at where she is at now. I just think, well, that's magical, man. Okay. So what kind of advice would you have in closing?
Gosh, well, that's a humbling thing for me to give advice to grandparents or grandpas. I don't feel like I'm in a position where I can necessarily give them advice. What advice would I give?
You had a wonderful relationship with your grandma. How would you extrapolate that, and your grandpa passed away when you were much younger. But, how is that applicable? And what did you do with your grandma that would be really helpful for a lot of these grandkids, to deal with their grandpas?
Well, first off, let me speak to the grandkids first. I love asking people, how much would you pay to have a voice recording or maybe like a 30-second video of your great, how much would you pay for that? To hear their voice, to see their mannerisms. In 30 seconds, you get a sense of their personality that stay with you forever, right?
Right.
And you have this amazing technology, just like your daughter, right? Why not utilize this? Record these things. You be that person in 50 years, 60 years now that we can look back and like really understand who your grandpa is. So for the grandkids, don't worry about being comprehensive and going through, tell us when you were born and go through, just think about interesting questions to ask. One question, one response, or one story. And do these like in little bits and pieces. Because quite honestly, like a 7-hour comprehensive video of someone's life doesn't necessarily always go deep. It's good to have the timeline, but when we look back on that, it's hard to look back on all that. It's tough to extract all that and just kind of like apply it to your life. When you can think about interesting questions to ask very dedicated personal questions to your grandpa, do it. Like whatever it is, you can even ask them what are good questions that are questions that no one asks you.
Yeah,
my grandma.
It's like your grandma saying, "I wish people would ask me about Larry."
100%.
Yeah,
she told me. She said one question that no one asked me that I wish they would. She said, "What are things that are hard or impossible to do today that you used to do?" And she loved it. She's like, "I roller skated." She was trying to figure out what religion to join when she was like a teenager, actually younger than that. She was like 12, 13. And she would roller skate like from church to church on Sunday and sit in the back and listen to the choir and music.
Such a cute
to figure out
mind's eye image.
Right.
Yeah.
Like just things like that. So think about that. Like, okay, Grandpa, once a week, we're just going to sit down. It's virtual. You have the tools for that. In person, you have the tools for that.
Yeah.
I used to use heavy media equipment to record stories for work. And now, honestly, my iPhone, I almost can't tell the difference.
Serious?
Just having like
even with your trained eye.
Yes.
Yeah.
So figure out a way. Okay, once a week, we're going to have this question and this story and go deep with that. And that's it. Don't overwhelm yourself. It's not a one-off thing, and keep that relationship going. So that's for the grandkids.
I like the idea of what you're saying of don't necessarily start, okay, you were born in 1934. What was life like for your parents? I mean, just kind of let it flow. And my experience, Mike, when I did my 100 stories on my phone with terrible production quality, was what happened was there were more and more stories that came out. I found that fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like going through the more specific the question, the more in depth you're going to go with.
Yeah, right.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that's for the grandkids for sure.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the advice I would have for the grandpas is to be as honest and vulnerable as you feel comfortable with. I know it can feel a little scary to say I was scared during World War II. I was scared when I had a fight with my wife, who we think is perfect.
Yeah.
The perfect marriage, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
You're going to find, especially with this generation, up and coming generation, that they're going to want to hear more of that vulnerability. Like from mental health and openness and transparency, that's such a key thing for connection. And so the expectation that you have for them to connect with you, have to feed that back. If you expect connection and openness from them, you're going to have to be open as well. Whatever you grandpas feel comfortable with, I think you're going to have a deeper relationship where they come back to you.
It's great advice. I think this has been a fantastic interview with a fantastic new friend. And I'm so grateful, Mike, that you would come and spend some of your time speaking to this vast audience. So our big goal is we want 1 million, community members, grandpas and grandkids, and these grandkids helping their grandparents, their grandpas deal with the phone and telling stories. And there's just so much fun stuff. And I just think we can learn from each other and, lift each other. And that's what we're trying to do. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Man, that was fantastic. That's it for today's episode of the Grandpa Channel. Until next time, keep the mic hot, the memories fresh, and the jokes just slightly inappropriate. I'm out of here. I gotta go take a nap.